Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Heroes. We're with Liberty Lass, our level 15 character who has 44,000 XP earned. 10,000 to go to level 16 in our next superpower, 97,000 influence. And we have just completed the Bonefire story arc, and so we got another arc to go. But before we do that, I do want to go into the options here and show you guys, because somebody generously made a comment. I'm sorry, I don't remember who. That if you go into controls and look under mouse here where camper shake is, I had it was I guess enabled by default. I've disabled it now. So they can go in there, second from the bottom, and you can get rid of the camera shake. Hit apply now, and there shouldn't be any more camera shake. So I don't have to avoid alien invasion zones anymore because we don't have any more camera shake. So now we're going to go to our next contact. You know, I haven't done any radio missions either. Maybe I should do some of those. Well, we'll do those next time. Let's go ahead and see what we can get out of our next set of contacts. So let's see. We have. Does Athena give us any new contacts? She does. So Farid Abdullah, who's in Steel Canyon. Haley Phillips, who just did one in Skyway City. So let's go to Steel Canyon. I don't know who this guy gives us as contacts. Oh, and you know what? Let's go into Steel Canyon South. We haven't actually done the Magic Society, the Midnight Club, or whatever it's called. Um, let's do that actually with Montague Castellaneta. So let's go ahead and do that, and I'll show you how to pick up those. I don't think Montague Castellaneta comes in through your other contacts like that. Let's get rid of him for now. I think that he comes in when you go. You have to like go and get the contact from him. I'm not sure if there is any sort of a natural way to. Um, I'm not sure if there's any normal like sort of natural way to get in touch with him through like the telephone calls of your contacts and stuff. I think you have to do it this way. So he's at the university. So here's the university. This is where you train for the how to do inventions and stuff. And if you go into the library over here, this is Montague, and I think he's ready for us. Yep, he's got missions. And so this is Lost and Found, and we're going to find Percy Winkley. He's missing. He's always missing. He gets kidnapped a lot. This is, I think, your first encounter with him. And so Percy is missing, and we got to go rescue him. He's in the Midnight Squad. And so what ends up happening is this actually, if you look here, you see how there's like a little moon, crescent moon. That's the symbol of the Midnight Club or whatever it's called. And you can get in there only if you do these missions for Montague. And when you get enough of them, then you go in there, and then there's another character inside who gives you missions as well. Gosh, I'm blanking on her name, but we'll see her soon enough. So this leads to some storylines about the Lost and the Riky. So spoiler alert on this, because I think there may be some little secrets about the lore that come out in this story. And this is one of the maps that they added after launch. It's called Oren Bega. This is probably this is probably the map set that I like the least. And so one thing we're going to have to watch out for here, I think a lot of this is going to be lost, but we got to watch out for here is that at this point we're going to start fighting the Circle of Thorns, and once they get into the like upper teens and 20s, you start getting a lot of the ghosts. What are they called? The Spectre Demons or whatever. And those guys are incredibly annoying because they debuff your 2-hit and they become almost impossible to hit, especially the lieutenants. They're really bad. And so we're going to definitely... What you have to just realize when you're going into the missions with them is you just carry extra yellows. Sometimes I just carry like half a tray of yellow, because they'll debuff you from 95% down to like 60 or 50 with a single shot. Also, somebody mentioned that I guess with energy melee, whatever color your punch is when you start punching is the color that everything kind of stays, which is sort of annoying because I really wanted to switch my colors of the powers between red, white, and blue. There's one of the demons, right? And so these guys are the ones that debuff your 2-hit, and they're really frustrating. So we want to do as much damage to them as we can. They're also, very vulnerable to smashing and lethal. Or no, for sure smashing. I'm not sure about lethal, but they're not very resistant to smashing and lethal. But they're not resistant to energy melee. They're vulnerable to that. So one of the things I don't like about these maps is that those teleporters randomly teleport you to different teleporters. And so sometimes you're trying to go through the hallway and you just like kind of can't get to it because it keeps teleporting you backwards to other places you've already been, and it's super frustrating. Very glad we now have an AoE. That helps a lot. We're going to need to definitely up the recharge on that so that we can do more area attacks. I don't know if Energy Melee has any other area attacks. Power Crash is a cone, okay. And Energy Transfer is just melee. So we have that spinning AoE, and then we're going to have a cone. And those we're going to want to probably up the recharge rate as much as possible because we're going to want to do AoEs as often as we can. As a tank or a brute, that can be quite helpful, right? Because you get surrounded, and then you can like pound all the guys that have surrounded you. So going back to these sort of teleport things, the reason I don't like them is because this one could teleport us here, it could teleport us there, or to somewhere else. So these seem like, oh, they're connecting, but it's just random. And there might be a little bit of a bias to get them to the adjacent one, but it's not 100%. And sometimes it can be really annoying to be going through them. The other thing that used to frustrate me is you have to turn super speed off. If you run through it with super speed, it doesn't seem to register, which I find really frustrating, and then it just doesn't teleport you through. Now these guys look a little wounded. I suspect they have been fighting the Lost, and they defeated the Lost. And so they were wounded and they didn't recover yet. And that's why they were partly damaged. And there's Percy. And that should rescue him. So he has been rescued. And we're not going to do the rest of this because, again, not a fan of these types of maps. And I didn't come in prepared for the Nervous Spectral Demons and the other little ghost guys. So now that we know that they're in the mix, I think what I'm going to do is move these over here and grab a couple more 2-hits. Now, I don't know if we're going to fight them at all anymore, but just in case. Where am I going? I'm going to the college. So, just as a note, Blythe Square, and the college is down there. Blythe Square, this is where the level up is. Valkyrie, and also Positron, who gives out a task force, which is one of the types of missions you can do. Task forces are... I don't know exactly how it works now, because I haven't been on a task force in a long time. It used to be once you got on them, you couldn't get off without just giving up. And you can get invited into them once it had started and stuff. I think they've relaxed some of those, but the idea of a task force is you get in a task force and you just go through a series of missions. And it's really sort of like running a gauntlet and sort of doing a story arc all at once with a group of people. And it used to be you had to have 8. I think now you can do it with fewer. In fact, I think sometimes you can. I think some people can solo it, but it requires being built in a very min-maxed way. Like this character wouldn't be able to solo a task force. Alright, so we saved Percy, and now we're going to investigate the Lost and the Riky. So there's a relationship between the Lost and the Riky. The Lost and the Riky have similar types of weapons. The Lost are kind of using sort of watered down, cheapy, or sort of stolen Riky weapons, and there are some other similarities between the Lost and the Riky. And so that's what they're trying to investigate here. Nice thing about flight is you can just go up and over all the buildings and make a beeline for your mission. One thing I do want to talk about, let's head down a little bit actually, and we'll take a look. Um, so one of the things that City of Heroes did that was different from a lot of other games. So let's talk about spawns, because I've mentioned them before, but we haven't really discussed them. A spawn is a group of creatures in an MMO that are there to be targeted and fought, right? This is a spawn. These two guys, this lieutenant and this minion, together are a single spawn. Somewhere around here is a spawn point, and if they ever get defeated, both of them, they will respawn after some period of time and come back here and do the same thing, right? So this is a spawn, and they remain relatively close to this area. There's code in the database, in the code base of City of Heroes, where if, say, I hit this guy and this guy runs away, or if he starts chasing me, they only go a certain distance. They're called leashed, and then they will return to their spawn point. So you can't drag them all the way across the city. They simply won't follow you that far. So in the old days of MMOs, where white cons were single individual monsters that would fight characters, a spawn might be one, although in City of Heroes it's usually not. Sometimes spawns were considered social. It was called baffing, bring a friend. All spawns in City of Heroes are social. They all bring a friend. If you hit one of these guys, everyone in the spawn will aggro to you, assuming they can see you, and they will come after you. And so to take out a spawn, you have to defeat everybody in the group, right? Once you have defeated everybody in the group, the spawn will regenerate. The difference between City of Heroes and some other games is, in most games, the spawn would be defeated, and then there's a timer, after 7.5 minutes, it will respawn, right, in the same spot. And so players would do something called, and I bring this up because I think somebody mentioned it in one of the comments, they would sit there and wait. If there was a creature that dropped valuable loot once in 100 times, they would get to the spawn point, they would kill it, and they would sit there and wait for it to respawn, and wait for it to respawn. Or if the thing automatically dropped the magic item or whatever, you would get it. And there was this etiquette where if I show up, the spawn point is under the statue here, and I know it, and I show up here, and there is another guy who wants to fight the thing under the statue, I would wait my turn. And there would be like a line of people waiting for the creature to spawn and take turns. It's called camping the spawn point, or spawn camping. You're camping their spawn. I always remember this one undergraduate who worked with me when I was a postdoc, and I was playing City of Heroes, and I'd played Star Wars Galaxy, so I knew about spawn points and spawn camping. Although you can't really do it in City of Heroes, and I'll explain why in a bit. I guess we don't need to have done this. He was struggling to get a meeting with what we call the PI, our principal investigator, the woman who ran the lab, and her name was Julia. And one day, he really needed to see her. And she had an office, but she was often not there because she had labs in like 3 different buildings. She had a lot of money in research grants and stuff, and so he couldn't find her. And so he went, and what he said to me was, "Okay, I'm gonna go camp Julia's spawn point." He went to just stand outside her office and wait for her to appear. He knew sooner or later she was going to go back there to get her lunch or to make a phone call or whatever, and he camped her spawn point, right? I thought that's really funny. But that's what people would do. They would wait in line for the enemies to appear. And what Statesman, who was Jack Emmert, who was the lead designer, and some of the other developers felt was that this is not in character. Like this is not something your character would do, is stand there and wait for an enemy to suddenly materialize out of thin air. And it's very immersion breaking to have an enemy just materialize out of thin air, just like they're beaming in from the Enterprise. You know, they're not there 1 second, then all of a sudden there's a headman swordsman and a headman gunman there. And you know that they're going to be there, so you just stand there and wait for them to appear. So what they did was they made the algorithm such that and I don't know how many people realized this after time had elapsed. They made this a known element of the game during beta, right? They told us in beta that this was true. They said it in launch. So early on in City of Heroes, everybody who played the game knew it. But I don't know, as time went on and, issues came and went and Going Rogue and City of Villains, I don't know how many people remained aware of it. And I don't know if people maybe just perhaps figured it out by trial and error. But in City of Heroes, outdoors, we're not talking about indoor missions. When you enter a door mission, everything spawns, right? That was a trick people used to make missions easier. You'd walk in solo, spawn the map. What happens is this level spawns. I think as you go up levels, they spawn as you go up through the elevator. But if you're on a map that's one level, the whole map spawns when you walk in the door. And you'd go in solo, and then you would walk out. The map is spawned. As long as you don't change missions or cancel the mission, invite 2 or 3 friends, you could walk in, and then you could do a mission of 3 people fighting a mission scaled for 1, right? Because everything spawns when you walk in, at least on the level that you first walk in on, if that makes sense. If we have to go up an elevator, then it might generate stuff as you go into the other level. But on this level, everything was spawned when I walked in the door. And I mean, you can prove that by walking through it as a stalker. Anyway, on the city streets, there are spawn points on the road, as I described. You can't see them, but there are spawn points in the, on the street. And those spawn points spawn enemies. They don't always spawn the exact same enemies, right? They're designed to be a certain level plus or minus 1. So it'll be like a 10th level spawn. It'll spawn either 9 to 11. And it'll spawn either 3 minions or a minion and a lieutenant. Might sometimes spawn a boss, but not most of the time. They don't have a lot of bosses. And usually it will spawn one type of enemy, although sometimes it'll spawn one of several. So the spawn point might be +1 to -1, like 9 to 11th level clockworks or skulls. Okay, and so if you defeat the spawn and everybody is beaten, there's a timer. After a certain period of time, they will respawn one of those types, but it won't respawn in sight of a player character. If you are within sight of it, it won't respawn. So if we were on the street here and this was a spawn point and we defeat these guys, if you stand there, it won't respawn. You have to go away. And nobody else can be standing there either. Right? So if we were on the street and we defeated these guys and we just stood here, we would never see Lost again in this spot. What you have to do is walk away, get out of sight, go far enough away, and then it will spawn. And so what people would do is, like when you're outdoors, you're on a city block, you would start on one corner and you would sweep around the block. By the time you got back to the starting corner, if you swept around the block fighting things, the guy that you had spawned in that corner has probably respawned. So that's like when you're fighting Lost in King's Row and they're only in one little section, that's what you kind of had to do. The problem comes when there are 10 different players all in King's Row, all in the same 2 blocks, all trying to hunt Lost. It's very, very hard because they won't respawn because there are too many people looking for them. And we used to have a lot of trouble with that at launch. Because even though they had instanced the zones, there were enough players in each instance that you could very easily have somebody in sight of almost every point on the map, and then things would take forever to respawn, which was very frustrating. Now, fortunately, the homecoming servers are not that crowded, and in fact, the live servers weren't that crowded eventually, right? What the real problem happened at launch when everybody was level 1 to 10 for, the first few weeks. And then as the hardcore people who were really playing a lot of hours and using exploits and power leveling started getting into the upper levels and abandoning the lower level zones, eventually the player base spread out so that the zones were sort of equally populated instead of everybody being in Atlas Park. And then it was less of a problem, except on Peregrine Island. I don't know if Homecoming has made any adjustments to Peregrine Island, but I know that in the launch version of the game, the live version of the game, and on Rebirth, it's horrible, right? Because in Peregrine Island, there's like 4 or 5 different mobs, and they all share spawn points, and it's a pretty small area. Got a little bit of hiccups. It's a pretty small area, and so it can be very frustrating. Like, it'll say hunt 50 carnies on Peregrine Island. I won't do that mission because there aren't 50 carnies. They share spawn points with who is it? The Nemesis and the Malta. And so I remember one time I beat 17 or 18 carnies. They were the only ones. Wow, we're getting pounded here. They were the only ones visible, right, in the entire map. And when I went back to the spawn points where they had appeared, right, there weren't any carnies there. It was it was the Malta, it was Nemesis, and then I defeated those guys, and they came back. No carnies came back. And so I finally said, all right, I'm done. And so we were fighting 3 spawns here. That's why I was getting pounded. I said, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I have no patience for that. So now if I get that mission, I will just auto-complete it. You can do, as I've said before, once every 3 days. But anyway, that's how spawns work. So if you're new to City of Heroes and you are doing a street mission, and you need to hunt a particular type of mob, right? Mob is a type of enemy, right? And a spawn is the group of them. What you have to do is take out the spawn and then walk away. Get out of sight, go somewhere else, go around the block or something. We're now running out of endurance. And give it a little bit of time to respawn without you being present. Right? They will not respawn if you're staring at them. So it's very tempting. There's some lost here. You defeat the 3 of them and stop and wait. They'll come back, right? You know that's the way computer games work. But City of Heroes doesn't work that way. They don't want you camping spawn points. So they basically designed that as an anti-camping mechanic. And it works great to avoid the camping. It's just that the street missions are very frustrating when that happens, because you found one, you know that they appear here, but if you stay there, they won't appear, so you got to walk away and come back. And it does, when you're trying to do all of the, get like 30 or 40 guys, it can be kind of frustrating, and it's very much of a time sink. So I don't do time sinks. And so what you'll see is, once we get to more than 15, when they start asking me to defeat 20 things, yeah, I just cancel that mission. Or I switch to a different mission or whatever, and then cancel it once my 3 days are up. Right, because you can only do it once every 3 days. Alright, so we're now starting to have some endurance issues, as you can see. And that just comes from going very quickly through the mission. So Cidion is one of the guys we have to fight, but let's take this thing out. So we need to access 4 computers and defeat Cidion or Cidion. So we'll access that computer. Why am I doing this now? It's letting my endurance tick up before we fight the boss. We've got a clue. That comes over here. So this is Riky computer data. Now we're not going to go get the other two because CDon is kind of in our way and he'll probably aggro to us. So I want to get this guy out of the way before we fight the boss. So let's see if we can pull him. Why is it not letting me? There we go. So one of the things I do is when and this is what I like about City of Heroes control system. You can click a power when you're out of range and it queues it up. It holds it, and then when you get into range of the power, it will go ahead trigger. So you can do a range power when you're really far out of range like this, and then as you move in, as soon as you get close enough, it will stop you and fire, which I really like. Let's take a look at the enhancements and see if we got anything useful. Stun we're not going to bother with. No, we don't have anything useful. Alright, let's go for CDon. We're going to go ahead and buff up before we enter the fight. One of each. That probably will be enough, but we'll see. There are 2 minions here in addition to the boss. That takes 1 minion out. We'll AoE them. So what's going to start happening as we use energy melee more and more is that we're going to start being able to stun enemies. Bosses are very hard to stun, although the Nemesis staff is very good at knocking things back. The main problem with it is that you can't enhance its to hit. So its base to hit's like 75, so you know, when you get debuffed or you're fighting guys that are higher level than you, you know, it's not as likely to hit. But so that takes care of CDon. But anyway, it's nice for the knockdown mez, the knockback. 700 XP for that boss. I think we're at 50% XP bonus right now, by the way. Which is why these guys are worth so many more XP than they are worth influence. And that completes this mission. So we can talk to Montague. By the way, one of the other things that's different now compared to how it was at launch, and now we're going to rescue a Riky called Argot Burwat. And his mission door always seems to be in exactly the same place. Oh, and there's the invasion. Wow, you can actually see through the war walls. Can you actually go through it? No. That's really cool, though. His mission door is always in the same place. Whoa! Yikes. Got too close to the spaceship, I guess. Gosh, what was I saying? I forget what I was saying. Let me think. Oh, yes. Back in the original game when it first launched, you had to do a lot of missions. So what you can see where these little notches are. When you get to the first notch, you get the phone number, I think, of the contact usually, or maybe it's the second notch. It used to be these were much further over. And so you had to do like 5 or 6 story arcs. Sorry, not story arcs. 5 or 6 missions of the story arc, missions period, before the contact would give you their phone number. And so I think originally these hash marks are, one was you now have the phone number, and the other is you now have the story arc. So it used to be that they wouldn't offer you the story arc until you had done enough regular generic like street missions and stuff for them, and they wouldn't offer you their phone number until you had done enough missions. And I can't remember which one came in first, whether you got the story arc first and then the cell phone, or the cell phone first and then the story arc. I think you got the story arc first, and then later you could get their cell phone number. But you had to do a pretty significant number of missions to get that cell phone number. So now to rescue Argot Barwat. So all of these missions are missions that start in offices, but they end up down underneath in a little Riky base, like you just saw in the last mission. And so what we're doing here is we're looking for the tunnel. It's not going to be over here. Let's see. And you don't need to defeat all the guys in the office building. You just need to get into the tunnel and rescue or capture whoever it is that you're looking for. And we have leveled up to level 16. That'll make this this mission fairly easy. Right? Because everybody's now going to be -1 or +0 to us. No more +1s. So things have been going well enough with this character that I think that as soon as we hit 22 and get SOs, we will we'll switch to +1. I think the only two issues with that are one, the ability to hit. So we got to make sure we have enough accuracy on all of our powers so that we can hit, because it's super frustrating to miss all the time. And the other issue is just going to be endurance, because you have to, it takes more blows to take them out. So it's just whether I've got enough endurance reduction, stamina, etc. at the time, we turn to level 22. Darn, I didn't mean to hit that one. I meant to hit this one. Oh well. It's fine. Doesn't matter. See if I can get them both. Nope, I missed them both. I missed one and the other wasn't quite close enough. So we're definitely going to need to make sure we have our endurance going. But one thing, guys, you have to realize is that endurance, accuracy, and damage are all kind of three sides of the same, like, same die 3 or three-sided coin or whatever you want to call it. The same pyramid or triangle, I don't know. They're all kind of a piece. You can add damage increase, accuracy increase, or endurance reduction to any power you want. And they all do about 33%. You can hit 33% more, you can do 33% damage, or use up 33% less endurance. So the thing is, if you're doing more damage, then each time a blow hits, you do more damage, you take a higher percentage of their hit points out. You don't have to make as many swings. So you don't need to reduce your endurance as much, right? Because you're not swinging as much. If you have higher accuracy, you don't miss as much. So you're not swinging as much, right? And so it's sort of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, whether you get endurance reducers and then you swing a lot more because you're missing and doing lower damage. But when you do that, you don't use as much endurance, right? Or whether you're using a lot of endurance every time you hit, but you're hitting for so much damage that things just get 1 or 2 shotted, and so then if you don't have to do as many hits, then you don't use endurance because you're not swinging as often. And so it's kind of like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, I guess, is the way I'm trying to say it. And this is CDon again. I've never understood this about this. We just captured this guy and now we're fighting him again. Sort of weird. One of our issues too is that we're still using some of this gray stuff, which is not super efficient on damage or endurance or any of the rest of it. This is Argot Berwat here. So we have Riky working with the Lost. In what looks like the same base they were just in, with the same computers we just investigated. So defeat CDon and minions, so we did that, but we got to defeat all the minions. And there it is. And I think we'll level up, and that's where we will leave it for this episode. So we're now 16th level. Our enhancements are going to become less effective. They're yellow to us now, right? And we could update them, but upgrade them, but I really don't see the point. Let's get out of this zone if we can. There's no screen shake, but I really have no interest in dealing with these guys. And we also need to sell our enhancements. This is where I wouldn't mind being a stalker. You just hide and they wouldn't be able to see you or shoot you. So this is one of the shops. This used to be the trainer enhancement shop. Can we not go in here? Oh, maybe we can't go in because of the invasion. Let's just go to another zone. Try to stay out of the aggro of these guys. They're coming right toward me. Of course, what you're... Yeah, he shot me. What you're supposed to do, of course, is team up with the other superheroes and take these guys down, but yeah, I'm not in the mood for that. Let's head to Atlas Park. Oh, we also need to talk to Montague. We might want to talk to him because at one point he does tell us to go to Azuria. So let's just talk to him. Okay, so we have to gather intelligence, but we're not going to do that in this episode. Let's go ahead and level up. And we can sell at the shops here. And these guys also, these shops also used to sell training enhancements, but now they sell only DOs. But they don't sell level 20, so we're going to have to go to Steel Canyon or Skyway City for that. We have 162,000 influence. Look at this. We have a bunch of these crappy, useless, low-level invention enhancements. So we got lots of influence now. We should have plenty to buy a full set of DOs when the time comes. And now we're going to train up to 16th level. And that's we're gonna go build up here. So if we look at the info on that, build up gives us plus 20% to hit for 10 seconds and plus 80% damage. So we're gonna, and it recharges every minute and 30, so we can get it down to 45. That's kind of what I said last time. The numbers were a little off, but same general idea. All right, folks, I think we're gonna stop here. I always want to stop on top of here, and there are always people up there, but there's never anybody on the dome, so we'll just stop by our favorite American flag here, Liberty Last. Until next time, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been City of Heroes on the Homecoming servers.